You are traveling to the other side of the world, to a foreign country, perhaps to study or work. You do not know anything. Your aim is to achieve good things for your future. Do you think that you will come across an inconceivable serial killer in the country you are going to? The people targeted by Joji Obara in Tokyo were those who came to his country from abroad. His goal was to corner the lonely women who came to his country. Today we're going to follow a story from Japan. Joji Obara was born in Osaka on 10th August 1952 to a Korean family. He was one of 3 boys. His real name was Kim Sung-jong. Later at university, he changed his name to Seisho Hoshiyama to avoid discrimination from Japanese students and teachers. After becoming a naturalized Japanese citizen, he changed it once again to Joji Obara. He belonged to a middle-class family in Japan. However, his father was a hard worker and turned from a scrap collector into the owner of a chain of pachinko parlors. Pachinko parlors are slot machine centers popular in Japan. When the man entered the gambling industry, he quickly became rich. This, of course, radically affected the family's lifestyle and the education of their children. Thanks to his father's wealth, Joji was able to attend private schools in Tokyo and receive the highest possible education. As a student at Keio University, one of the most prestigious universities in Japan, he graduated in politics and law. In addition to an elite university, he had the opportunity to travel abroad and spend summers in the USA and Sweden. He spoke fluent English, was polite, sociable, and at the same time enjoyed the comfortable lifestyle provided by his father. While traveling in the USA and Sweden, Joji felt humiliated because of his Asian origin and his slightly short stature. To look taller, he wore inserts under his shoes and took growth hormones to help him grow taller. He even had surgery to make his eyes look rounder like Europeans. In the 1970s, Joji's father died while on a business trip in Hong Kong. His father died under unknown circumstances. It was thought to be linked to Yakuza gangs, because Yakuza gangs often use pachinko parlors to launder their money. After Joji's father died, his fortune went to his sons. Joji used his fortune to invest in real estate and property development in the 80s and 90s when Japan was booming economically. He was quite successful. After a while, he had reached a fortune of $45 million. With all this money, Joji's taste in sophistication also increased. He bought many luxury apartments, cars such as Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, and Maserati. He often dined in fancy restaurants and visited the most luxurious hostess clubs around Tokyo. Hostess clubs are places where wealthy Japanese businessmen hang out and drink with beautiful women. Unfortunately, when the financial bubble burst in Japan in the late 80s, Joji lost a lot of money and had to borrow millions of dollars. He also had to do business with Yakuza gangs to stay afloat. Since Joji did not like to talk much and was rarely caught on camera or in public, his dark secrets were not revealed until 2000. Until these years, his past was extremely dark. But nobody knew. When he came out, the eyes of the world were on this man. Joji not only had cars, traveling, and luxury items, but he also had a penchant for drugs. He was a drug user himself and used them to get what he wanted. And what he wanted was women, especially beautiful, white women. Joji would visit nightclubs and hostess clubs, target a woman he liked and invite her to his beachside apartment. He would then offer her a drink laced with rohypnol, also known as a narcotic. Once she was passed out, he would tie them up and sexually assault them. He called it the game of conquest. All of his attacks, which lasted about 12 hours, were filmed. When the women seemed to regain consciousness, Joji would knock them out again with a chloroform-soaked cloth. After regaining consciousness, some women told police that they remembered drinking a wine they had been given and waking up the next day with a hangover and in pain. Joji told them that they had drunk too much the night before and had passed out. He often said that he was wrong for making the women drink so much. The girls actually suspected this, but they couldn't go to the police because they were working illegally in hostess clubs and didn't want to get in trouble and be deported. So they had to helplessly accept whatever was happening to them. Joji also gave money to these women as hush money. He wrote in his diary that his goal was to have sex with 500 women by the age of 50. The rest of the diary was even more horrific, because he emphasized the importance of the unconsciousness of the women he wanted to have intercourse with. Carita was 70. She was a model who decided to go to Japan to do modeling and teach English. She wanted to act. However, she had no money to pay for acting school in her country. She decided that she had to work a little for it. She thought it would be easy to live in the glamorous area of Tokyo and earn a lot of money because she was beautiful and foreign. She arrived in Japan in December 1991. Her sister Samantha was already living in Tokyo with her boyfriend and teaching English. Carita only wanted to stay a few months to save some money for herself and her fiancé, who was waiting for her in Australia. Unfortunately, she couldn't immediately find a job as a teacher, so she decided to use her good looks to get a job in a hostess bar. As a hostess, she did not have to perform any sexual acts or undress. She just dressed nicely, smiled, chatted, and served drinks for rich businessmen. One of the customers of the hostess bar was Joji Obara, a regular there. On Valentine's Day 1992, a group of businessmen and hostesses, including Joji and Carita, left the club and went out for a group dinner. It is not clear what happened during this meeting, but it is likely that Joji singled out Carita and invited her to his beachfront property for a drink. Carita's sister had spent the weekend at her boyfriend's house for Valentine's Day, and when she returned home, she found a text message saying that Carita was going away with her friends for the weekend. When Carita still had not returned home after the weekend, Samantha became worried. The next night, she received a call from a hospital in Tokyo saying that Carita had been admitted and was being treated for severe food poisoning. Samantha immediately rushed to the hospital. The hospital staff told Samantha that a man named Akira Nishida had dropped Carita off. The person who dropped her off told doctors that Carita had eaten shellfish and had fallen ill. Then he left quickly. The doctors concluded that Carita had hepatitis D or E, but they had no idea what had caused it. A few days later, still unconscious, she slipped into a coma. Unfortunately, large amounts of chloroform had caused liver failure and organ damage. Carita's liver was failing. The doctors started liver treatment and put her on life support. The doctors could not do much because they did not know exactly what had happened. Doctors transferred Carita to another hospital, but she was brain dead there. The family desperately decided to take her off life support, and Carita died in hospital. No autopsy was performed, and her body was cremated according to Japanese tradition. While Carita was in hospital, Nishida called Samantha several times to inquire about Carita's condition. He explained that he had shown her to her private doctor before dropping her off at the hospital after she had suffered from food poisoning. However, despite the phone calls, she never revealed any information about her identity or personal details. After Carita died, Samantha and her boyfriend went to the police and asked them several times to investigate the mystery caller, but the police refused. Immediately after the family received Carita's ashes, Nishida called and asked to meet the family at the airport and pay for Carita's funeral expenses. The family was actually talking to Joji, who said his name was Nishida. The man repeated his story about Carita eating bad oysters. Carita's mother noticed that he was sweating all the time. He also told the family that he loved their daughter very much and would have been with her if this had not happened. Nishida also gave the family the diamond necklace and ring he had planned to give Carita for her birthday. Despite the strange and unusually generous man meeting with Carita's parents and sister, the police never investigated or tried to find out more about him. Joji managed to get away with murder, even shaking hands and thanking the parents of the girl he had killed. For 9 years, he did not attempt anything like murder again, until 2000. In 2000, he set his sights on a new target. Lucie Jane Blackman was born in England on 3rd September 1978. She had come to Japan after getting tired of working as a flight attendant for British Airways. She had decided to live in Tokyo, but she was not allowed to work because she only had a tourist visa. Like other foreigners in the city, she started working illegally. Like Carita, this was the hostess club. While working at the hostess club, she met Joji Obara. She was only 21 when she met him. Joji seemed to like Lucie and wanted to take her out. Unfortunately, hostesses were not allowed to date their customers freely. They had to arrange a date with the owner of the hostess club. In this appointment, called a dohan, the customer had to pay money to the club in order to take a hostess out. Depending on the hostess and the customer, these appointments could be anything from dinner or shopping to sexual intercourse. On 1st July 2000, Joji arranged for a dohan to meet Lucie. Lucie told her friends that she was going to drive to the beach with one of her clients. Joji drove her to his beachside apartment in Zushi, Tokyo. That night, the young woman called a friend on Joji's mobile phone. This was the last anyone heard from Lucie. When Lucie did not return home a few days later, her flatmate Louise Phillips became alarmed and called the police to report her missing. However, the police did not think it was a big deal that an air hostess who went out with wealthy business clients did not return for several days. According to the police, this was perfectly normal. Perhaps they had been on holiday together. Louise went to the police with the British consulate, insisting that Lucie had disappeared and that she would not have left for so long without contacting someone. After Lucie disappeared, she also received a strange phone call. A man called her friend Louise and told her that Lucie had decided to join a religious cult and run away. The man insisted that Lucie did not want to be searched or found by anyone. Louise found this very strange and immediately contacted Lucie's sister, Sophie, in England. Sophie traveled to Japan on the first plane to look for Lucie. When she went to the police to report Lucie missing, when the police found out that she was talking about an air hostess, they once again refused to investigate, saying that air hostesses usually run away when men offer them money. As the police did nothing, Sophie and Lucie's father, Tim, organized a press conference with the help of the British minister and the word of then Prime Minister Tony Blair. They also set up a hotline for anyone with information about her disappearance. The media campaign was widely publicized both in Japan and in the UK. The news became so important that people who had experienced something before started to come out one by one. In particular, stewardesses who had traveled somewhere at night and couldn't remember what had happened in the morning gave Joji Obara's name. When women started to come forward, some women said that they had already reported him to the police, but nothing was done. Under pressure from the media, the British government, Lucie's family, and more reports from other women, the police finally decided to question Joji Obara. While interrogating him, they also started the search for Lucie. On 9th of February 2001, the police unfortunately found Lucie's lifeless body. She had been buried in a shallow grave covered with a bathtub in a cave by the sea, just a few hundred meters from Joji's house. The body had been cut into 8 different pieces and placed in garage bags. The head was shaved and covered with concrete. Strands of hair were later found in Joji's flat and confirmed by DNA to be Lucie's. Unfortunately, the corpse had already decomposed too far to determine the cause of death or whether there were any toxins in her body. After that, a thorough search of Joji's house began. In addition to Lucie's hair fibers, a large quantity of sedatives, drugs, and chloroform were found in the diary, which contained all the entries, including the entry referring to Carita. In addition, there were hundreds of video recordings of him having sex with women in his home. Although there were hundreds of different women raped by Joji on the tapes, no tape of Lucie was found. However, they did find a receipt from 1991 for Joji's hospitalization of Carita. There were also receipts for a chainsaw and a shovel, most likely purchased to dismember and bury Lucie. The hospital where Carita had been treated in 1991 still had a sample of her liver, which could be tested. When the liver was reanalyzed, it was found to contain toxic levels of chloroform. In Joji's house, there were not only human murder details. He also had a dead pet, a German shepherd, in his freezer. In October 2000, Joji was finally arrested and charged with the rape of 8 different women, the murder of Carita Ridgway, and the rape, murder, and disposal of the body of Lucie Blackman. During the trial, Ridgway's family returned and identified Joji as the man they had met 9 years earlier under the alias Nishida. The trial lasted 6 years, and finally on 24 April 2007, Joji was found guilty of raping 8 women and manslaughter. He was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes, but acquitted of the rape and murder of Lucie. Because prosecutors could not prove that he had committed these acts, The body was too badly decomposed to check for any toxins, and the cause of death could not be determined. In any case, Joji Obara had not confessed to the murder. The judge felt that although it was clear that Joji had been with Lucie before she disappeared, this was not enough for a conviction. If Lucie's remains could have been examined, the court would have been eager to sentence Joji. Despite all the evidence against him, Joji continued to maintain his innocence. He told the court that he had paid Lucie to sleep with him, but that he had not given her the drugs that caused her death and that he was not involved. Unlike most cases in Japan where confessions are made, Joji denied this. It was also believed that the shovel, chainsaw, and video of Lucie were destroyed by Joji before police raided his home, making it difficult to prove his guilt. The prosecution appealed the verdict, stating that they had important forensic evidence that was not heard at the first trial, and on 16th December 2008, the Tokyo High Court found Joji guilty of the kidnapping, mutilation, and destruction of Lucie Blackman. Joji attempted to appeal the life sentence, but in 2010, the Supreme Court of Japan rejected this appeal and upheld the life sentence. Lucie's father breathed a sigh of relief after this verdict. Although his daughter would never come back, this man almost got away with Lucie's murder. Unfortunately, despite Joji's life sentence, hundreds of women and their families will never return to normal. Lucie's carer Sophie attempted suicide in 2005, and her brother is still trying to live with the trauma of her death. The hundreds of women in the tapes will always have to live with the knowledge that they were victims of this sexual pervert and rapist.